Hey, it's Tamie M of TamieMCoaching.com, empowerment life coach and creator of the Freedom Class. And what I want to talk to you about today is how to survive narcissistic relationships with grace. Now, before I begin this video, I just want to quickly announce that we have a few spots available in the calendar this week for the free one-to-one consult with either myself or a member of my team for the Freedom Class program. So if that's of interest to you, be sure to stick around till the end of the video for the announcement on how to enroll and register for that free consult. And with that, let's get started. So let's talk about how to survive narcissistic relationships with grace. Much easier said than done, for sure. You know, there's nothing easy about perpetually being exposed to anyone who lands on the spectrum of destructive narcissism, whether that's a romantic partner, your spouse, your sibling, your parent, your boss, your colleague, your neighbor, whoever it is. There are severe consequences. There are serious effects detrimental to our emotional, psychological, spiritual, and even physical well-being. Perpetual and constant exposure to someone who is lacking in empathy and lacking in conscience is, without question, harmful, right? Now, as much as it's great to say, just remove yourself from the situation, and I'm a firm believer in the power of no contact and distancing ourselves from people who do not have our best interest at heart, we can't always do that instantaneously. And, you know, truth be told, some folks just aren't even interested in doing it at all, in spite of the detrimental consequences. And the reality is that's an individual choice, right? That's an individual choice. If we're talking about an aging parent, some folks choose to stay in the ring, stay in the game. That's the right choice for them. If we're talking about, the mother of our children or the father of our children, or, someone we've been married to for decades, for any number of reasons, we may choose to stay in the ring with these folks, in spite of the fact that there are, again, serious and detrimental consequences and effects to our own personal well-being. Now, the thing is, if for whatever personal reasons you may be choosing to stay, whether that's short-term till you can figure yourself out and get yourself extricated from the dynamic, or for the long term, those are deeply personal, entirely up to you. But there are some things that you can do to help you navigate this really toxic, dysfunctional, and harmful relationship to where you're turning down the volume at least a little bit in terms of the harm that is being caused. Now, the first thing that you want to do when it comes to surviving a narcissistic relationship with grace is manage your own expectations. I'm going to say that again. Manage your own expectations. In 12-step recovery, there's a saying that goes, expectations are premeditated resentments. Expectations are premeditated resentments. And, there's a lot we could say about that, but I think that, that can be pretty appropriate if we can keep that in our, the back of our mind when we're dealing with someone who lands on the spectrum of destructive narcissism. Again, high spectrum or otherwise is not the point here. The point is, that you're dealing with someone who is lacking in empathy, who is lacking in conscience, who's probably highly manipulative, highly deceptive, highly dishonest, right? They've proven this to you. So, does it make any sense to expect an individual who doesn't have empathy, based on your experience with them, to suddenly show up with empathy, a heart, compassion, consistently, predictably? Does it make any sense at all to expect an individual who has shown you that they are lacking in conscience? In other words, they feel entitled to do and say whatever they want in spite of the harmful effects and consequences on you and others, doesn't even register on the radar for them, right? Nose firmly embedded in navel. They do not have the same emotional response to hurting people, stepping on others' toes, crossing boundaries, causing you harm. They've shown you this through your experience. So does it make any sense to expect a person who is either lacking in conscience or perhaps even completely devoid of conscience to suddenly show up with a conscience? That makes no sense at all, right? Does it make any sense at all to expect someone who has lied to you repeatedly to suddenly be honest with you, especially when it counts? Does it make any sense to expect a thief to be trustworthy? Not really, right? So it's vital, if we want to manage these difficult and often very destructive relationships with a little more grace, a little more ease for ourselves, that we have realistic expectations. That's foundational. It's critical. It's vital that we tell ourselves the truth about who and what it is that we are dealing with, and then we make our decisions accordingly, right? If we know that we're dealing with a highly manipulative individual who actually gets a sick kick out of hurting us or others, does it make any sense to spend hours and hours and hours on end opening ourselves up, pouring our heart out, agonizing over circular communication, trying to be seen, trying to be heard, trying to be understood, trying to get the love, validation, approval, and acceptance that is never coming from this individual, right? So that makes no sense at all, right? First time, shame on you. Next time, I got to own some responsibility in this game. Once you've shown me who you are, if I keep showing up expecting you to be different than who you continue to show me you are over a period of time, like there's a pattern here, I've got to own some responsibility in this game, right? So realistic expectations. Don't expect a person who is lacking in empathy, lacking in conscience, has a tendency to be harmful on any level, in any way. You've observed or experienced ongoing patterns of attitudes and behavior here. Don't expect them to show up differently. The best predictor of future behavior is past behavior. They've already shown you who they are. They've already shown you what they're capable of. Believe them, manage your expectations accordingly, and take care of yourself accordingly. Next, you want to surrender and accept the reality that these people do not change. I'm going to say that again. They do not change. If you're dealing with a person who has a destructive narcissist pattern, based on your experience with them, you know you're dealing with someone who lands somewhere on the spectrum of destructive narcissism based on their general attitudes and behavior towards you and others. The truth is, these folks don't change. It's not whether or not they can change. Anyone who lands on the spectrum of destructive narcissism, by virtue of what they have, does not want to change. They are lacking in the capacity for self-reflection. That would be required to make the necessary changes to suddenly be able to show up and have a healthy relationship with you. Any kind of relationship. If they land on the spectrum of destructive narcissism, in their distorted perception of reality, they're not the issue. They're never the problem. They're never wrong. No matter how appalling their attitudes may be, no matter how destructive and harmful their behavior may be, by virtue of what they have, they are not likely anytime soon, not in this lifetime anyway, going to make the necessary changes for you to be able to have healthy, happy, loving, nurturing, safe relationship with this individual. Not going to happen. So the sooner you surrender and accept that reality, the better. The longer you stay in the game of handing over your vital life force energy by virtue of constantly being in and out of this toxic, dramatic, chaotic, painful, vital life force draining, energy sucking, enmeshed right? Fighting that goes on, trying to be seen, trying to be heard, trying to get your needs met by someone who isn't capable of seeing you, doesn't want to hear you, and certainly isn't capable of meeting your needs, right? So the longer you're in there fighting that fight, the more all of your resources are being depleted. Trying to control what you actually have zero control over, that's how we make ourselves very sick very fast. So again, the sooner we surrender and accept the reality, what I can change, what I can't change, and whether or not they have any desire to change. Now, listen, the truth is, you know, when you get serious about making some moves and taking care of yourself, they may show up and love bomb all over you and tell you everything you need to hear and make all kinds of empty promises. That's emotional manipulation. That's not necessarily sincere, genuine, heartfelt apology with the intent to actually do what is required for lasting, permanent, positive change. There's a big difference, right? So it's our job to be able to discern, to know the difference between someone who is being sincere and someone who is manipulating us. And I know that can be tricky, which is why having a good support system in place is vital, because sometimes it's hard, especially, you know, if we haven't actually even begun our own healing and recovery work. It can be very difficult to, you know, see what's really going on, to discern, right? If we've been gaslit and messed with for decades and decades and decades, it can be very tricky and difficult to navigate that. So having a good, healthy support system, or, you know, a good sounding board to go to, whether that's a coach, a counselor, a sponsor, a therapist, you know, someone who actually understands these issues to help us navigate our way through these dynamics, that can be, you know, the big difference maker. But, you know, the point here being, surrender and accept to the reality. This isn't going to change. These people aren't going to change. So, you know, a really powerful question to ask yourself, if you're choosing, for whatever reason, short-term, long-term, whatever it is for you, if you're choosing to remain in this dynamic, a really powerful question to ask yourself is, if nothing changes here, what do I have to do to be at peace in this situation? What do I have to do? And this doesn't mean that, you know, we roll over and become doormats and allow ourselves to be further abused and trampled on. You know, by no means does surrender and accept the reality of who and what we're dealing with mean that we suddenly have to just give up and lay down and allow harmful people to trample all over us. Not at all. In fact, when we surrender and accept and start telling ourselves the truth about who and what we're dealing with, we're actually very much, not just psychologically and emotionally, but energetically taking our power back. And that's when things can really begin to shift for us. But surrender and acceptance to the reality that folks who land on the spectrum of destructive narcissism, they don't change. It's not going to change. And the sooner we tell ourselves the truth about that, the better. And the easier it is to then navigate the dynamic with a little more grace. Now, next, you want to take radical responsibility for yourself, your life, your well-being, and your happiness. As long as we are putting the responsibility for our well-being, our happiness, our peace of heart, our peace of mind in the hands of another individual, we're at their mercy, no matter who they are, whether they're a destructive narcissist or not, right? We are fully giving our power away, rather. So if you want to learn to navigate any relationship with more grace, but especially a relationship with someone who lands on the spectrum of destructive narcissism, it is vital that you learn to take radical responsibility for yourself. So again, that is, I am responsible for me, my needs, my happiness, my joy, my peace, my well-being. It also, by the way, means I am responsible for my triggers. I am responsible for my wounds. I am responsible for my unresolved issues. That doesn't mean that I'm to blame. That doesn't mean that I'm guilty and need to carry toxic shame. That doesn't mean that I wasn't victimized at some point in my life. But it means that I choose to not live my life as a victim. I'm taking my power back. I am owning full responsibility for all of me and my life experience. It's all about growing up and waking up, friends. That's what healing and recovery is all about. And if you're tuning into me, there's a good chance you might be in need of some healing and recovery, right? The healing and recovery work is all about growing up emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, waking up, ascending out of the darkness and into the light of conscious awareness, conscious living. And big people, adults, healthy humans, take radical responsibility for themselves, their happiness, their peace of heart, their peace of mind, their wounds, their traumas, and their triggers. If you are surrounded by people who are perpetually triggering you, you've got some tough decisions to make, and you've got some work to do. My triggers, my stuff. Your triggers, your stuff. And if I constantly steep myself like a tea bag in an environment where I am being provoked and prodded and provoked some more to where, you know, I'm erupting, I'm reacting from my wounds, my unresolved issues, and my triggers, I've got some work to do. Welcome to the human race on planet Earth. This is the vast majority of people. The difference is you're actually tuning in to a YouTube video looking for solutions. That's not most people. So give yourself a little, you know, love and kudos and credit to yourself for that, right? If you're at least seeking solutions, seeking answers, seeking information to help you grow, evolve, and ascend to the next level, that makes you certainly not part of the masses. That's not what the vast majority of people are doing with their pain, their discomfort, their trauma, right? So it's all about radical responsibility, not putting, you know, all of my power in the hands of anyone else, not least of which someone who has shown me that they are harmful to my well-being. Next, you want to learn to develop healthy limits and boundaries. If you are unable to set healthy limits and boundaries with anyone in your life, but especially the difficult, toxic, highly manipulative people who feel entitled to exploit you for their own wants, their own needs, their own whims, their own wishes, anytime they feel the need, if you can't set healthy limits and boundaries with these people, you must learn. You must learn. And this is a skill that can be developed. It takes practice, it takes dedication, it takes stepping out of your comfort zone and being willing to do something new, being willing to do something different. It takes exercising the muscle and certainly being willing to endure a little pushback because, you know, when folks who are used to getting away with all manner of nonsense in our lives suddenly are being told no, they're likely not going to like it. And you're going to be okay in spite of that, right? But again, if you're unable to set healthy limits and boundaries with these people, if you're unable to say no with the difficult, toxic, exploitative people in your life, without getting all twisted up inside with fear and anxiety and guilt and shame that doesn't even belong to you, then it's high time, my friend, that you learn. It's high time. This is a vital skill. It is very difficult to live a really good, healthy, happy, peaceful, joyful, abundant life in any area of our lives if we are lacking in the ability to set healthy limits and boundaries, if we do not have what it takes to say no when we need to. It's very difficult. So again, this is a skill that can be developed and learned with practice, with intent, with support, with guidance. And it's your job to learn and develop that skill for yourself. If you want to survive relationships with people who land on the spectrum of destructive narcissism without forever feeling like you are selling your soul to the devil, because that is very much what it is. Let's tell ourselves the truth, right? If you want to be able to navigate these relationships with more grace, with more ease, with less dis-ease going on inside and around you, it's critical. It's 1,000% vital that you learn to set healthy limits and boundaries. Now, another thing that you want to do in order to be able to survive relationships with narcissistic people with more grace is learn the gray rock method. Now, I'm not going to go into great detail here on this video because I have a whole video that does a deep dive on how to master the gray rock method. You can catch that video here, so be sure to watch that video for more information on this. But suffice to say, the gray rock method is all about becoming a less appealing source of emotional and energetic supply to the destructive narcissist. It's all about becoming a whole lot less interesting, a whole lot less appealing of a target. The concept is about being really uninteresting, really uninterested, and absolutely boring. By virtue of using the gray rock method, they'll find someone else to provoke, to antagonize, to get their hit, their fix, their source of supply, their energetic hit and fix from, and you'll be left in peace. So to navigate these relationships with more grace, the gray rock method can serve you really well. So be sure to check out that video. And last but not least, have a support system in place. If you don't already have this for yourself, find it, create it, whether that's online, face to face, however you need to do that. There's lots of options available, but it's vital that you find a way to surround yourself with, to have regular contact and connection with people who actually understand these issues, but more importantly, understand the solutions and are living in the solutions. When we have reasonably, relatively healthy folks in our lives who get it because they've been there, they've come out the other side, wiser, stronger, smarter, skilled, right? They can be an amazing source of support for us, a place to go where we can feel safe, we can feel heard, we can feel understood. So one way or another, find your tribe, find a support system. When you've got that support system in place and you can go and safely vent when needed, when need be, or, have them act as a sounding board for you, or, bounce things off of them and get some clarity, some feedback, and often even just the validation alone. No, honey, you're not crazy. That's crazy. You're not the crazy one in this situation. Sometimes we just need to hear that, right? So having that support system in place can be life-saving, not just life-changing, but life-saving. So one way or another, set yourself up with a support system of like-minded people who get it, but more importantly, as I said, are living from a place of solutions that actually work. Big difference maker for you. My friends, I hope you got some value out of this today. If you liked what you heard, remember to give it a like, drop a comment, let me know what your biggest takeaway was. And if you're new to the channel, welcome. So happy to have you here. Be sure to subscribe and hit that bell to be notified when I post new videos throughout the week. And as I mentioned at the top of the video, we do have some spots available in the calendar this week for the free one-to-one consult with either myself or a member of my team for the Freedom Class program. So if that's of interest to you, there's a link in the description below where you can apply to see if you qualify for a free one-on-one consultation with us. And with that, I'm going to call it a wrap. As always, I will leave you with this. Know your value. Know your value and unlock your freedom. Much love. Bye for now.